Hey, good morning, Facebook. This is Jim Blythe, and joining me, the big man, Cedric White, fantastic minister, fantastic marriage counselor, and also joining us today, our wonderful author, writer, speaker, all of these things. We're talking about Marc Liebman, who actually it was a naval aviator. Welcome to the Veterans Impact Show, where our motto is Charlie Mike. Continue the mission. I'm your host, Jim Blythe, U.S. Navy Vietnam veteran and certified senior advisor. Join me as we feature veterans who continue the mission of leadership and commitment in our communities after serving our great nation. Why, you never know who you're going to meet or where we're going to go. So welcome aboard. Hey, great day, everybody. This is Jim Blythe. Joining me, Cedric White, my co-host and new partner. Also, a very frequent, very close friend, Marc Liebman, author, lecturer, helicopter pilot, U.S. Navy, captain, retired. So Marc always says, if you want to know how to fly, ask a Navy helicopter pilot, because they know more than anybody else. True, Marc?
Yes, in the Navy, we refer to ourselves as fully qualified naval aviators because we flew both fixed and rotary wing just to get our wings.
All right. Hey, that's a wonderful thing. We're going to be talking about the benefits of the military today, but I want to say a special thank you to Nathaniel for setting us up, my wife Diane, also to DBTV Network that puts us on Amazon Fire and Roku and AUN Network out in California. We love you. Also to Fairway Independent Mortgage, the company I work for. We do reverse mortgage lending. We are one of the top lenders in the nation. We're the largest non-bank mortgage company in the nation. My MLS number is 311548. Our corporate one is 2289. And we are an equal opportunity lender, and we keep all the attorneys happy. So thank you so much for being a part of this today. Share this. We're going to be talking about the benefits of joining the military, the benefits of being in the military. And Marc came up with this idea, and I think it was really brilliant. So there's a lot of things that we, as no longer active duty military, but having gone through the military, have learned a tremendous amount. So Marc, you were talking about, before we got started, the skills training you get and how not only that relates to after the military.
Yeah, so what I call the glory skills, like a naval aviator, everybody thinks that we all go to the airlines after we leave the military, just like the Air Force pilots and the Army and Marine Corps aviators. But the enlisted rates have a tremendous opportunity. So, for example, if you're a mechanic, I'm going to use the word aviation mechanic, or an aviation electrician, or an aviation electronics technician, or a metalsmith, or a hydraulic specialist. You can go to school with using your GI Bill, which we'll talk about a little bit later, and get an A&P license. Right now, the A&P, the airline industry in the United States is needing A&Ps that have licenses. Or you can go to work for an aircraft manufacturer. So right now, today, I have a granddaughter who is seriously dating a young man going to a community college in Southern California that's partially funded by Lockheed, Northrop Grumman, and Boeing. And when he gets out with his A&P after 2 years of school, they will guarantee him 40 hours a week at $38 an hour. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot, except it's $72,000 a year, plus bennies. So this is for a young man who's 19, 20 years old, has a 2-year degree from community college, and has an A&P license. But if you went to the military, you don't have to go through all that schooling, and you get the same kind of benefits. And so that's part one. So there's other skills. So if you're a culinary specialist, if you can go to work for restaurant food chains and hotel chains. You can, if you're a cyber security technician, or it's now a cyber, I think it's cyber warfare specialist, you can go to work in any IT firm in the world or any IT department, because you will understand the defensive side of cybersecurity as well as the offensive side. If you are an intelligence specialist, not only are the intelligence community interested in you, but there are lots of businesses that will look at you as somebody who can analyze data and look at things, and it's called a data analyst. So there's all these skill sets that you'll learn as you spend your time as an enlisted person in the Navy. And the other services, because they all have equivalent type rates. If you're a corpsman, you can become an EMT, you can become a physician's assistant, you can even, well, as I know, several who've gone on to medical school. So all these things are cool, and the GI Bill that you are given after you have you qualify, which is I believe 180 days of active duty, you now can use that afterwards. And if you don't want to use it, you can give it to your children or even your grandchildren under the current GI Bill. And if you pass away, you can put it in your will.
Oh, Mark, excuse me. When you talk about education, you know, you can actually get your education because there's a lot of men and women. My good friend, Dr. Ashmore, she went in as an enlisted Marine.
Yep.
She was working in the judge advocates group, and they were so impressed with her, they sent her to college and to law school.
Correct.
And so, wow, all of a sudden, she comes right out of law school and starts practicing law in the military.
Yeah, so she became, that's another rate. It's it's called a legalman in the Navy. I don't know what, in the Marine Corps, I don't know what it's called in the Army and the Air Force, but it's a rate. There's other rates like journalists. And so again, you learn how to write various news stories, public press releases, all kinds of other stuff. You learn how to interview, and you can go to work for a newspaper or some kind of electronic media as a writer. So there's all kinds of jobs that you can do post-military that the military not only trains you for, but gives you practical experience. So if you're, here's another one, since we're on radio and TV today, if you are a journalist or you're a broadcast specialist, you might be part of the Armed Forces Network, and you literally are on TV broadcasting to dependents and servicemen stationed overseas. It's a really cool thing. It's a really cool job, and they go out and they interview senior officers, junior officers, whatever else, whomever they want. But it's a real live news network that's self-contained within the military. But it's a real live skill, and it's practical experience that you can put on your resume, this is something that you can't get anywhere else.
Cedric, you were missile and fire control.
Right.
Okay. There is Lockheed Martin or Raytheon has a missile and fire control here in McKinney, Texas. Yep. And they're looking for guys like you.
Right.
Now, you know, you're not interested now because you're a minister doing marriage counseling, but basically these kind of technical things that we did in the military. Now, let me back up from that in just a second, because what did I do? Well, I was aviation maintenance administration, which meant kept all the logs and records and scheduled and coordinating all of the scheduling of the aircraft. Well, I'm sure within the industries there are people who are needing to do that. But
Dispatchers.
What it did for me was it taught me organizational skills. And so I used that in my business because I had all of those organizational skills and I knew to do it. And then when I got into commercial real estate and development, I knew how to plan things and program them and set them down so that we could follow basically schedules and get things done. And people were amazed.
Let me say, when I got out, I was a gunner's mate missile technician. Right now, I worked with electronics. I worked with pneumatics. I worked with mechanics. I had all of those skills, and I was able to take that and transfer it. I went to work for a computer company working on, and I'd never touched a computer in my life, aside from when I was getting out to do my resume. However, they took the skills that I had, and they saw from a military perspective what I could do. I was able to answer questions in the test that they gave me, and it transferred over. And immediately I was in IT, had no experience whatsoever in that area, but my skills transferred over. And a lot of the things that you're talking about, I love the cyber security aspect because that's huge today.
Yes, it is.
That is huge. And so to go in and get that training, the one thing that I went in the military for was for somebody to train me in a skill that I could use when I got out. And it did work for me. And I saw the world. It was wonderful.
Yeah, so one of the things we're not talking about, seeing the world in the Navy is they used to say the Navy is not a job, it's an adventure, or join the Navy and see
Boy,
the world.
right. It's
true.
It's true. And you do get to see the world. Some places you get to go see aren't the garden spots.
Right.
So it's not all Cozumel and
Right,
Acapulco.
right.
But the other thing that you get is a lot of what I call soft skills.
Mm-hmm.
And Cedric just touched on that. And that's the ability to work in a team environment in which you don't get to pick the
Yes.
team. It's not like, you got a bunch of kids stand up and say, we're going to divide up. I'm going to pick my team and you're going to
Right.
pick your team. Oh, no. You get assigned by a detailer in D.C. and you're there, better or worse. So it's, when I say it's diverse in the truest sense of the
Yes.
word. It's diverse educationally, it's diverse backgrounds, language skills, cultures, you name it. And guess what? Y'all have to work together to get
Yes.
something done. And it's also it can be a very stressful environment, because the unique thing about the military is you have missions to do or tasks to do, and quite often it's difficult. And there's nothing called a 40-hour work week in the
Right.
Navy. They own you lock, stock, and barrel.
Right.
And so, and you get deadlines, and it's adapt and overcome sometimes, and it's stressful. As a junior officer, I learned the famous 4 words, which I tell everybody all the time. It's, sir, I don't understand. I don't know how to do this. And your boss says, go figure it out.
Yes. Yes.
And I use that as a consultant. I've used that throughout my life, but it's those kind of organizational skills. And I'll use the word the fearlessness to take on tasks about that you've never done before. And you have the skills to figure out how to break it down into component pieces and go get it done.
Mark, can I say one of the things that I learned that has really worked for me was the removal of the expected routine.
Correct.
There
Oh,
there was no routine. You did what was necessary when it was necessary.
Correct.
Holidays were important and they were recognized, but if you had work to do, you did the work that was necessary. Night, midnight, morning, holiday, it did not matter. You did the work that was necessary, but it taught a skill taught me to get the job done regardless.
Yeah, whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes.
Yes.
Adapt,
So-
improvise, and get it done.
So
Yes.
Cedric, when you found out coming out of boot camp that you were going to be what'd you say, a gunner's mate,
Gunner's
fire
mate
control
missile technician. Yes.
What was your reaction? Was that what you wanted?
I didn't have a clue. I really didn't. When I went in, the recruiter, I had one of the best recruiters, I have to admit. I had one of the best recruiters, and I took my ASVAB, and I scored pretty good, right? And they asked me if I wanted to be an ET, right? Electronics technician. And I was like, and I thought that was just, running wires through the wall. I didn't know, right? And then they asked me if I wanted to be a fireman. Well, I'm thinking a fireman that puts out fires and with the water hose. I didn't know it was the radars and shooting missiles. And so I didn't know. And so they said, what about a gunner's mate? And my grandfather raised us around guns. And I was like, that sounds exciting. Well, it worked out to my advantage, but I didn't have a clue. I really didn't. I was just going in. I wanted a skill, something that I hoped would be transferable. But I feel like there was a lot of grace, and my recruiter helped me out to do what I needed to do.
So I was in the helo community, and I spent most of my time in what we call detachments, typically 1 or 2 helicopters, at most 4 officers, a chief petty officer, and a finite number of enlisted men. And so you wind up spending a lot of time handing them wrenches in the helicopter, drive around in circles,
Right.
doing things that you have a chance to talk to them and get to know them. And a lot of things that these young men would, because they're typically 18, 19 years old. And this is another thing that I tell people that now that I look back I'm 78 now, but our helicopters were maintained by 18, 19, and 20-year-old young men. Now it's young men and women,
Right.
and who've been trained, and they screw up and I die.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty simple.
But you didn't die, and so they didn't screw up.
Correct. So my point is you get to know them. And one of the things that they told me, almost to a man, was the fact that one of the things that the military gave and the Navy gave them was discipline.
Yes.
Yes. Because they were one young man who unfortunately just recently passed away, became an E9 and became one of the senior air crewmen in the United States Navy. And he was offered in 1969 in a court in Brooklyn, New York, a choice: Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, or jail. And in the courtroom, there were supposed to be recruiters,
Right.
but he was the first kid up, and the only one who showed up was a Navy recruiter who was an air crewman, and the rest is history.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So it. And here's something else for those of you who have friends who are who've just come into this country. If you join the military today, it's the fastest path to U.S. citizenship on this earth. And what happens is you go as an individual goes to boot camp. I'm using the Navy example because I just saw this under my grandson last October, and so. Before they have the ceremony, they take all the young men and women who are not citizens, and they take them over and they administer the oath of citizenship to them.
Wow.
Because as part of boot camp, they did the school part of becoming a U.S. citizen.
Wow.
And then they also, as part of boot camp, they also got English as a primary language as opposed to a secondary language. So when they come out of boot camp, they are basic training, and if you're in the Army, at least this is what the Navy does, so I can't speak for the Army. So you're now a U.S. citizen, which means you can marry somebody and they become a U.S. citizen, and their children are automatically U.S. citizens.
Yes.
And you can then sponsor your relatives, parents, grandparents, to become U.S. citizens. Now, there's a time limit when you can do that and all that kind of good stuff, but it's a pretty cool deal. And oh, by the way, you get to be part of one of the greatest organizations
Yes.
that ever been created by man.
You know, Cedric, you touched on something that you were kind of flailing and you didn't know what to do.
Right.
I was in college and I was not happy and I was not doing well. I went into the Navy, and let me tell you something. I came out, I was so focused, I was so
Yes.
determined.
Yes.
And when I went through boot camp, it changed me completely into a much, much better person, much
Right.
happier person.
Right.
You grew up.
You grew
Boy,
up.
did I
mature.
ever. And let me tell
So
you,
right.
you know, 3 combat cruises on aircraft carriers was a wonderful experience. Yes, it was trying, but it was wonderful. Well, when we come back, we're going to talk more about some of the fun experiences we had and tell some war stories. But we're also going to continue to talk about the benefits. The benefits not only while you're in the service, but after the service, because there's some amazing opportunities and things that are available for you, right, guys?
Yep.
And I got to tell you, you want to be a great pilot? Become a helicopter rescue pilot. I mean, they did crazy things that nobody would ever do. But more than that, it's a great to be part of that fraternity that we look out for each other because we work together side by side. Whether you were from New York or Louisiana or from California, whether you were African American, you were white, you were Mexican, you were Chinese, whatever, we worked together and became a brother sisterhood. This is Veterans Impact. Welcome back to the Veterans Impact Show, and thanks to our sponsors, Fairway Independent Mortgage and Lone Star Wealth Strategies. Now, let's continue this great conversation. Hey, again, this is Jim Blythe with Cedric White. We're here for you. Cedric, tell everybody a little bit, Healing Thine Heart Ministries, what's your website? Where can people go and learn about you?
Well, our website is healingthine, THINE, hearts.org. And what we do, our focus is family. Our motto is building better relationships to strengthen family. We believe in family. We know, my wife and Michelle and I, we understand how broken families affect generations. This country was built on family. This country was built on a Christian mindset. And we believe that if we can help families not to break down, we'll be a stronger family, a stronger community, a stronger city, and a stronger country. And that's what we, every day, that's what we do here at Healing Thine Hearts.
And Mark, you're a great author. You're an Amazon best-selling author. I love your sales series, which is about the 1700s and early 1800s.
1800s, American Revolution.
American Revolution. Now, also, you have written books about Vietnam that I called you up after I read one of them, and I said, Mark, this is not fiction. He goes, yeah, I had to change some names to avoid some lawsuits, but it's great books, a great storyteller. And you got a new book coming out?
Yes, probably sometime next month. It's called Last Battles. It's the fourth book in the series about the American Revolution. It's about naval officers. And speaking of family, the family thread in each of these books, in fact, all my books, is very strong. So Cedric talked about the American family. When you go back and look historically, the average American family in the 1800s was 5 and 6 and 7 children. Now, there's reasons for it, and we can get into that if you want to. But it was not until post-World War II that the I hate to use the word the materialistic side of us, but the United States is a country of overachievers and workaholics. And we have been that since the Revolution. But it's a struggle for two-income families to raise a family, and the number of children per family has dropped from large numbers. I mean, we only have 2, but then again, my son has 7. Of course, it's a blended family.
Right.
But the point being is that the family unit is so critical, and
Yes.
a lot of kids who join the military are running from a bad family environment, and the military can become that family. If they come from a military family, most of them will look at joining the military in a positive light, because it did. Their parents or mothers will tell them that it was wonderful for them when they look back on it. There are times when you're in the military that you go, "Oh my God, what did I do?"
Right.
But most of the time, as you age, it looks back and go, "Wow,
Yes.
it gave me a lot of tools." So I have a question for Cedric.
Yes.
Since I have run across gunnery mate fire technicians.
Okay.
What kind of ships did you serve on? And tell us a little bit about some of the fun things that you happen that make you laugh, not cry.
I was I was on the CGN 41 my entire time. It was
Explain to everybody what a CGN is.
CGN it was a nuclear powered cruiser,
Which one?
right? Arkansas, USS Arkansas, straight out of the shipyards, brand new. We came out of Newport News, based in Virginia. And we were there for a year and a half. I did 2 med cruises, 2 years, and then we changed home ports. Went through the Panama Canal, went over to the West Coast, and then I did a couple of Westpacks. One of some of the most interesting stories that I have are those times when we didn't expect, right? We're called to general quarters, and because we were on a collision course with a big freighter out in the middle of the Indian Ocean, and we actually had a wreck with this ship. And again, you're thinking, all of this ocean, how can 2 ships? You got people, right? They're up on the quarterdeck, but we actually had a wreck, and we had to pull into, I want to say it was an Italian shipyard to get repairs, because it ripped part of on the forecastle, it ripped part of it away. And it was one of those things where it's like, wow, this has actually happened. And then we were in the Indian Ocean, had to go through the Suez Canal to go back into the Med because of the Lebanon crisis. Yeah. And we were the only non-amphibious ship there. We were huge in comparison to all of the ships there. And that was really the only real military action that I saw, aside from running tests. But those pictures will remain in my mind. And then, as you were talking about military family, there's a friend of mine that we reconnected, John Valite. He spent 41 years in the Navy. This guy worked for me when I was in, and he spent 41 years in. He became an officer, and now we're trying to connect with some of the other guys that were there, because we had a great family unit. Our families were together. This guy and his wife helped to raise my daughter. My daughter is 41 years old now. And so just those kind of stories, those kind of things that affected my life, him and his wife, and we're trying to catch up with some of the other guys, because that was our family.
Yeah, so what you just described was the big ocean, little ship theory of staying apart failed.
Right.
But your sea lanes, it's kind of like your air traffic control, that you're flying. you can accidentally, I mean, a huge sky, and you can get too close to
Yes.
somebody.
Yeah, it's
Yes.
called Big Sky, Little Airplane
Yeah.
theory of air traffic control, and sometimes it fails.
Sometimes
But
it fails.
I've,
Yes.
I've never been on a ship that has had a collision, but I've been on one that's had a fire, and that's an attention-getting moment.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
I was there after the Oriskany fire, and yet we had small fires, electrical problems, because these were older ships. And I went through every firefighting school the Navy had, and I also qualified and had a chance to fly in the TA-4 Skyhawk, and we had a major runway crash, and I got to see firefighting very close
Right.
and personal.
Up close
man.
and personal.
And, you know, it was wonderful. I had some of the greatest experiences a guy can imagine flying jets. I got to sit in the back seat and with Tom Cruise. Only my pilots were real, and they were good. Hey, we're going to be back in just a minute, and we want to talk a little bit more about the family and the young family in the Navy, because this was in my mind. And this is Veterans Impact Show. We're here for you. So share us on Facebook. Be a part of us. Share us subscribe to us on YouTube. Get out there and tell everybody, hey, these guys are veterans, and they're talking about how you can be a better veteran, and also the opportunities for young veterans. This is Veterans Impact Show. Welcome back to the Veterans Impact Show, and thanks to our sponsors, Fairway Independent Mortgage and Lone Star Wealth Strategies. Now, let's continue this great conversation. Guys, we're having a ball. We're kind of playing by the seat of our pants, because Diane and I are in the process of moving, and so our life is all in boxes right now. The problem is we don't know what's in some of the boxes. So she said to me this morning, "Where's the hairdryer?" And I go, "I have no earthly idea." So,
That means that you don't travel for a lot,
Right.
because you have known that you take, all you have to do is take your suitcase and everything is in it. I
Yeah.
mean, to this day, I'll say I retired in 2015, so it's not 9 years. Okay, it's almost 9 years, and I still have a suitcase with my travel kit in it.
Like a
So
go bag.
It's like a go bag. So all I got to do is put clothes in it.
Right.
yeah,
Because all the
well,
toiletries are there, and if something runs out, I replace it. Hey, I want to toss something
Oh, okay.
at you that I thought of as we were talking about family. Okay, so we have a lot of the men and women that come into the Navy are typically 18, 19 years old, and they go through basic training. The Marine Corps is probably the toughest. The boot camp is, my grandson who just went through it said, it was okay. You got a lot of people yell and scream at you, but I had, every time they did that, I'd blank out and I'd think of the insignia of what I want to become at the rate.
the globe and anchor.
Yeah, well, it's the globe, but it's just what do I want to do. But there's also an opportunity to meet other people and become lifelong friends.
Yes.
So some of the people I flew with in Vietnam, I still talk to today, every day. I have friends from my time as a senior officer that I still see and talk to. And one of the reasons I go to Navy Helicopter Association and tail events every year is because I see people and they keep getting older. I don't seem to have that problem. But also there's a serious aspect to this. We also have a chance to meet and talk to each other, and also raise a glass, and you don't have to have adult beverages in it, to those who have passed on. There is a camaraderie, and even though I may not have known that individual well, there's camaraderie, and you feel some pain. And as I've gotten older, and I'm being somewhat serious, there's more and more of these things that we see in the Navy. We call the naval aviation, we call Signal Charlie, which means when it's referring to somebody's life, it means that person's passed away. Right. And I keep seeing these things in more and more of them people that I know. And I now have two very close people from my time in Vietnam, which means it's 1970, 69, 76, 54 years ago, that are now facing the ultimate challenge. and it's painful. It really hurts.
Yeah.
And that's something that I would never have imagined.
Right.
My squadron gets together, my VA 163 that John McCain was part of. He was with us when he got shot down. We get together about every 2 or 3 years. We're going to get together in 25 down in New Orleans. And boy, I got to tell you, Ken Adams and I are going to put that together, and that's going to be a ball. Ken Adams was the best pilot we had. He was the craziest pilot we ever had. And I flew with him first when I qualified. And I got to tell you, there is no greater pilot in the world than Ken Adams was, without a doubt. He was also, he made Tom Cruise look a little bit weak, trust me. But having these experiences, and let's go back just to one thing. When a young family, 18, 19 years old, the Navy and Marine Corps Emergency Relief, the Army Emergency Relief, and I know Ray Mason, who runs the Army Emergency Relief, they have all kinds of training programs for young families. Everything from financial literacy to taking care of children to this, that, and whatever. They actually, they surround these young families, they can, with the ability and tools to be able to take care of things, plus free medical.
Yeah, so we as officers, and it started when I was still in the Navy, are encouraged to encourage our sailors who've got, I'll use the word family issues. It could be financial, it could be marital, it could be childcare. A lot of these, sometimes these kids are born with spinal bifida or autism or something else, like some life-threatening or long-term disease. But to go see counseling, and the thing that they make sure we know, and we make sure that their compadres or their fellow sailors know, is this is not bad.
Right.
The fact that he's seeking help is a good thing.
Yes.
And it's not making him look less manly or womanly.
Right.
It's just feces has happened in their lives, and
Right.
it has to be dealt with. And the faster we can do it, the better. It goes back to one of my favorite sayings, that bad news doesn't get better with age. And so it's part of what we do. It's part of the brotherhood that we take care of each other, both on active duty and pretty much later in life. Because one of the other things that you'll find is, yesterday I was at an event, and I was introduced to an Army colonel. He and I had never, ever met before. Yet we, A, had an instant bond, and B, in 30 seconds, we figured out our paths probably had crossed and in the same countries at the same time, or we had similar experiences. And so suddenly there's a bond, and you can talk.
Right.
And
There's a connection.
exactly right. There's a
Right.
connection that's on multiple levels. Okay?
Oh, without a doubt. Cedric and I talked with General Robert Dees not too long ago, who was one of the most amazing men I've ever talked to. And he was a major general, U.S. Army, and he's doing a veterans health organization in Virginia, in a place where they're doing all kinds of training and help. And he and I talked, and we found an instant camaraderie, and he started sending me names of other people, which is amazing. Diane just handed me a note, and Jake Urban, hey, Jake, thank you for being on board. Where did you serve, and what did you serve in? Type it in, and Diane will let us know. But all of these things are part of a community that, from my experience in the commercial and the business world, doesn't exist.
Yeah, so Jim and I, and Cedric, I don't know, so I'm not.
That's okay.
I'm not being negative, but Jim and I are members of at least 3 or 4 of the same veterans services organizations. And you look around the room, because I give speeches to these things all the time, and you ask, and by the time you get everybody, how many's Army, how many's Navy, Marine Corps, blah, 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 probably 80-90% of the people in the room are service members, and that's male and female. And so, and what are these organizations focused on? Well, we're focused on helping our fellow veterans who are in need. And I'm involved on the board of directors of one that raises money. We raise 6 figures every year to donate to local chapters to help veterans who are in need. And it does. The need is everything from I need a house, or I need money for my for this, or I've got, it's just in need. That's all we as a veteran need to hear, and we're there. We're there to
You
support them. So, and this is part of the thing that we learn very early on in the military about in the SAR community. It's basically, we're not going to leave anybody behind. The Marine Corps, and the Navy, the Special Warfare people will tell you, we're not going to leave any of our brethren behind. And that's what this is part of the service that you learn, and also the values that you get as you get older. Veteran in trouble, I'm a veteran, I need to help. Right. That's why we go to the sound of gunfire, so to speak, as opposed to
we run into the fire instead of
away from the fire. Correct.
And I got to tell you, I just joined a 501c3 that is raising money to help veterans who may not have had a good discharge, or may have gotten discharged early. I've known a lot of people who basically didn't make it that 180 days because of medical conditions. But also, one of the things a lot of people don't realize is the VA healthcare system is the largest healthcare system in the world. And our Dallas-Fort Worth VA is now the largest in the United States, and Texas has more veterans in it than any other state in the United States. The VA healthcare system is improving every year since I have been working with them in broadcasting, going back to 2015, the changes they've made. And for instance, the PACT Act. PACT Act has gone back and helped a lot of people out. It helped me out when we were talking about it. And I got to tell you, there are benefits afterwards. I used my GI benefit to get a college degree. I used my GI benefits to get my instrument rating and my pilot's license. There's so much after. But you talking about the service organizations that we belong to get with those men and women once a month, whatever, whether it's VFW, Navy League, the Association of the United States Army, Air Force, and then the NDSB briefings.
Next Defense briefings here, yeah.
Yeah. It's always a ball to see these guys. And it's a brotherhood or brother-sisterhood because we welcome the women as well.
I want to tell you a quick story here. My father was a career Air Force officer, and he'd been retired for several years. And I brought him to our squadron, and just because he was coming down to see us. And I thought, hey, Dad, you want to spend the day with me? I'll get permission because we do classified stuff. And he said, sure. And he walked into the ready room in the morning, and his eyes lit up like I had not seen since he had been in the Air Force. And he was suddenly with, as he said, I'm with my fellow aviators.
Yeah.
And so what the squadron CEO, unbeknownst to me, asked, hey, Colonel Liebman, would you please come up to the front of the ready room? I'm going to introduce you, and I want you to spend 5, 10, 15 minutes. Tell us about your career. Now, my dad was a 3-war veteran, 2 tours in World War II, Korea, and also Vietnam. And so he talked for 5, 10 minutes, and everybody in the ready room, and I was not the first one to stood up and applaud. And my dad started crying in front of us. But and some other things, but that led to a lot of thinking on my part about what it means as a brotherhood, and it's a brotherhood like nobody else, because we all have shared experiences. Right. We've shared danger together, many of us, and it could be as not simple, but it's something as like a collision at sea, which can be really exciting, if you know what I mean. Yeah. And the first thing that happens as soon as the ships collide, the skipper of the ship goes, "Oh crap, my career is over."
That's it. That's it.
But he then but the only way he's going to salvage is, he's got to get the ship back to port. But anyway, but it's a brotherhood like nobody else's, and you see it in the enlisted ranks. I spent a lot of time with the Navy Special Warfare people, and their brotherhood is
real tight.
It's real tight.
Yeah.
It's hard to be even accepted. Right. I'm known as a SEAL taxi driver. I take them there and I go pick them up when they need to be picked up, and in between I had no value.
Right.
One of the things too that we go back to the training. You made a point And then Admiral Woody Beale made a point that our military trains enlisted men and gives them leadership training and gives them really abilities to do things that no other military in the world does. Maybe the British, I'm not sure. But
Yeah, British. A lot of the the Western militaries do a fairly good job at training leadership. But if you look at most employers, they see a veteran who's an E5 after 6 years of enlisted time, and they'll typically legally there's rules where they're supposed to give them preferences, but they'll look at them and say this is probably a more mature employee who has more potential because he's already got the basics of things that the values that we crave as a business entity, and there's lots and lots of opportunities. I can't use the names on the air, but there are companies here in the Dallas area who hire veterans and teach them trades, okay, which trades like being a plumber, an electrician. It's good money.
Mark, we interviewed a guy, and I cannot think of his name, and Diane, correct me, Forge One was the company. Forge Now. And Forge Now was started by a West Point graduate, and they are teaching all of these trades, a number of trades and things in a military type environment. And you come out, you got a certification. Here's the big thing.
So you're a certified electrician, a certified plumber?
Yeah.
Whoa.
And one of the things is they have a group of investors that are not investors, but contributors that are corporations.
They hire them.
And they're standing there going bang, bang, bang. There's another one out of Jacksonville, Florida that does the same thing, and I can't think of its name. And they are basically placing them as fast as they get them certified.
Yeah, so the reason I know a little bit, I mentioned them, Antelope Community College, is because, again, I've got a granddaughter who's probably going to marry one of their graduates. But a lot of their students are ex-military, came out of the aviation community or other communities and are getting aviation certifications. Why? Because they literally on day one, they have a choice of 4 or 5 defense contractors, several airlines, several companies that do aircraft maintenance, contract maintenance, as is known, and other countries, the companies that are involved. They literally have, the employers have representatives on the school 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and they get summer internships, which is kind of like a 3-month job interview. Right. And when they most of them know when they come out of the internship, it's Northrop Grumman, they'll have a job offer and a start date. All you do is graduate, pass and pass the background check and the drug test. And again, you start at 38 something an hour, which is, as Cedric did the math, it's 72 large a year. Right. That's pretty good money for a 25-year-old kid. Yes. I could live on that.
You know what? There is also, and I was talking to somebody the other day, and this kid goes, well, I want to go to truck driving school. I want to drive a big rig. And he said, I can make $125,000 a year. I said, if you went in the military, they'll teach you to drive that big rig, and you'll have a military license. And then when you get out, if you go to the state of Texas within 18 months,
it translates.
It translates, and you're driving, you got your CDL. I'm like, really?
Great deal.
Wow. Yeah. All of this made me a better person when I came out. And gave me the ability to do, I've been president of several companies, I've run major developments, I've had a great, great life. And part of what I did was Armed Forces Radio when I was on the Oriskany. I love being able to help people. I love being able to serve. And that's one of the big things that I have found in the military community. We all like to continue the service.
Correct.
So, when we come back, we're going to be wrapping up for just a second. We're having a lot of fun. This is sort of an unscripted deal. This is kind of fun. I can't have a cup of coffee because I'll choke, but we'll be right back with Veterans Impact Show. And we hope you are sharing us. Welcome back to the Veterans Impact Show. And thanks to our sponsors, Fairway Independent Mortgage and Lone Star Wealth Strategies. Now, let's continue this great conversation. This has been too much fun, guys.
Yeah, I want to get Cedric to talk about something.
Go for it.
Okay, so gunner's mate,
Yes,
fire
sir.
control technician. So have you ever sat there on the console and you got the radars going and you got an airplane coming at you off an airways and it's got no IFF?
Yes.
Did your heart rate go up?
Oh, that constantly. Constantly. There were times, except again, when we were doing things in the Med where other, let's just say,
Unfriendly countries?
unfriendly countries would test our borders, would test our limitations, and we'd have to be ready with the mindset, hey, you might have to
Push the button.
push the button. Let's just say push the button. And we practice, but in the back of your mind comes to the fact that one day you may have to do this. You may have to make that decision, but you're prepared for that. You're prepared. We even here in our office, we talk to couples, and I say you prepare for battle in a time of peace, so that not if, but when the battle comes, you're ready. You don't have to think about it. It's muscle memory. You're doing it. So in life, in relationships, and in the military, you prepare for battle in a time of peace. And that's why the U.S. has the best military, because we are prepared.
Yeah, we train the way we train the way we're going to fight. We try to.
Yes.
The reason I asked that question is because you said the Med, and you said a cruiser, which is a guided missile cruiser, which means you're in the center of something,
Yes.
and you're part of the primary close-in air defense.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
And in that part of the world, there's all kinds of airplanes. Many of them not using a transponder.
Right.
Many of them from different countries. So the question is you said the muscle memory, and you're prepared to push the decision.
Yes.
This is where I have problems with the current buzzword of AI, because you're a human being.
Yes.
The tactical
Yes.
action officer standing behind you
Right.
or near you,
Right.
who's sitting next to the captain,
Right.
is going to say the magic four-letter word,
Right.
fire, and you go boom, and
Right.
you don't think about it. But you do think about it
Exactly.
beforehand. And AI takes the human, if not done, out of the loop.
Right.
And that's the scariest thing
It
to
is.
me.
It really is. I mean, there's a lot of things. There's some great benefits to it, but to remove the factor of even the compassion, even the consideration, even the change. Everything is not black and white. There's a lot of gray that comes into consideration when you're engaging, whether it's enemy or possibly friendly people or contacts that are out there. There's things that have to be considered, and when you use AI, you remove.
Yeah, it
that
becomes
human
ones and
aspect.
zeros,
Yes,
and you're
yes.
dependent on some human being who's written the algorithms and the
Exactly.
formulas. I mean, the reason is because I know several people who were on Vincennes,
Mm-hmm.
and they had the horrible incident with the airliner. But they were in the midst of a firefight.
Yes.
They were in the midst of other things. There were bogies that weren't squawking.
Right.
There are Iranian aircraft in the air. So I don't want to replay the Vincennes,
Right.
but my point about AI is it's a wonderful tool, but there has to be human intervention
Exactly.
before you push them, because we can look at the data and say, not right.
Right. Right.
And we can then, I'll use the word have a discussion. Sometimes you don't have, it's not like a debate, but you
Right,
can have
right.
a human interaction, say, hey, look at this, skipper. What do you think?
Right.
I think it's bad, or I think we need to shoot.
There's a different level of consideration
Yes.
that goes into it. Like you said, it's not just ones and zeros. So.
You know, and one of the things, I'm a private pilot. We have all the equipment in our planes that we fly, and so I can use GPS. I can go somewhere. We've got the autopilot. One of our planes is so well equipped, you could do a Category 2 ILS approach with the autopilot.
Explain what a Cat 2 means.
Well,
because most of the audience doesn't know.
It takes you way down.
And you're
through
going
the
to trust
clouds.
this autopilot.
Huh?
You're going to trust this autopilot.
Well, that's the thing. I would not want to be in that plane commanding and flying it and not watching everything like a hawk. Because and I have actually had an autopilot go crazy on me once or twice in the air, and you have too. And so being the human backup, you can see if there's a mistake being made. AI may not see that mistake.
or may see it differently.
See it differently. Yeah.
Yeah, so I tell people, if God forbid the balloon went up again, the United States is not going to have access probably to GPS. It's not going to have access to SATCOM in the way we have it today. And so we're going to be back to fighting and flying the way we did pretty much in World War II, or even before, which means we're dependent on these paper things called charts. That's maps to the Air Force and the Army. We're dependent, and we're going to be dependent on sending ships into an area to do sea control units, whether they're Marine Corps, and they're not going to have instant communication. So that it's going to be incumbent on the officer in tactical command, whether he be an O2 or an O10, to make decisions that are going to affect the outcome.
Now, I want to do a quick and kind of a closing. Somebody asked me the other day, we don't need a military in the world. And I go, no, that's not true. China their biggest thing is food. They are buying up not only land in the United States, but they're buying up land all over the world in highly productive places. But they're also setting bases in place to control the sea lanes. Food, materials, whatever thing. Oil, gas, whatever you do around the world travels by the ocean. And if you cut off things, you're going to see things go haywire. Yeah. And one of the big things is, man, I know how to make that landing work. So let's say, hey, thank you. We've been a great day. Let's close with a prayer. Lord God of the universe, we are so thankful that you are with us, that you put a hedge of protection around our active duty military, those who run into the fire, along with our first responders. Thank you, God, for all you do, and thank you, God, for our veterans who reach out and pull together to help this nation come together and work together, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This we pray in your holy name. Thank you, dear Lord. Amen. Hey, this has been Veterans Impact Show. Mark and Cedric, dadgum, it's fun to do this. Let's do it again next week. Hey, you guys have a great day, and I'm heading out to Joint Reserve Base to watch the Blue Angels.
I saw them yesterday.
Hey, they're great. They're great. Hey, Veterans Impact Show, we're here for you. You join us.